Welcome to the really no, I'm sorry, I had the wrong podcast there for a second. Oh man. Welcome to the transforming the HX. It is one of those days. It's going to be an interesting one, Lisa. I'm telling you. It's going to be interesting.
Awesome. I'm ready. I'm
So,
ready.
welcome to Transforming the HX, where we talk to brilliant people about what they're doing to transform the human experience. It could be in work, it could be outside of work. We cover a lot of ground on every one of these shows, and I absolutely love it. And it's casual. Some of my loyal followers know I was going to call it Bourbon with Bodo. We'll just sit here with a glass of bourbon and chat. But times are changing. We gotta support the healthy mindset, I guess.
There you go.
So tonight, my guest is Lisa Scolnick. And is that correct pronunciation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And some people wonder, like, why doesn't he know his guests? Well, Lisa and I have actually never met in person. We've done phone calls and lots of Facebook chatting back and forth. I think this might be the first time we're actually on camera together too.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been we've known each other for quite a few years now, but never been live in person, which is always interesting.
Yeah. So this is exciting.
Yes. So Lisa is an engineer by training. And so we're going to talk about that, how she got her start there. She has her MBA, which, is always a wonderful thing to have, to understand and combine that engineering with the business side of things. And she has spent the last 30 years in the area of operational excellence. So helping companies really improve how they operate, reach a level of quality. I won't say perfection because we never get there, but continuous improvement, definitely. And she's also a facilitator, trainer, and coach. She is a certified in Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, I believe, and a certified high performance coach with Brendan Burchard's High Performance Academy. Did I miss anything there really significant?
No, that's about it.
Okay, and we'll get the rest of it as we go along.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is, well, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but building productive teams. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about your upcoming book. I want to learn more about that because I got excited when you sent me the cover. I was like, yes, I love when people publish books. It's awesome. They put their knowledge, their wisdom down in writing, and everyone else can tap into it. So that's awesome. So why don't you tell us, Lisa, a little bit more about yourself, a little bit about your background, and
No, that's about it.
Okay. Whoa. We'll get the rest of this. My phone went crazy there for a second. This is a casual show. It's casual. We're good. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got your background in engineering, because honestly, it's one of those things that it's a male dominated field, and you got in there early enough that you probably saw a lot of interesting things happening as it began to shift to more balanced. So tell us about that background.
Yeah. So I've been, so I'll start with like high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I always did well in math and science. And I had a guidance counselor who said, "Oh, you're good at math and science, be an engineer." I was like, okay. So, you just do what people, adults give you direction for. And I was originally an aerospace engineer. And my freshman year was when the Challenger disaster happened. And all of us aerospace engineers were like, oh, well, what do we do now? And so a lot of us shifted out of aerospace engineering into something else. And there was a guy that lived in my floor that explained, he was sharing what industrial engineers do. And I said, oh my goodness, I think I would really like that. So I shifted to industrial. And very challenging. There were definitely times that I was going to give up. And I remember one conversation with my dad, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to switch, to something else." And he said, "Well, I'll support you with whatever you want to do, but if you're switching your major because you don't feel like doing the work, or you want to go out and have a good time with your friends, that one day you're going to look back and you're going to regret it." And that's when I said, oh, shoot, Dad's right again. So I was like, oh, okay. So I stuck with it, graduated. And then I've been working in manufacturing companies for the past 30 years, all different kinds of manufacturing. Started in pharmaceuticals with lotions, creams, and ointments, moved into automotive, which is very different, go from a very clean environment to a pretty busy environment. and then worked in a number of different industries. So pretty much most manufacturing processes I have seen either as an employee or as a consultant. So I have been on my own at times. I kind of go back and forth. If there's like a fun opportunity, then I'll go inside. And then when I get tired of that, or if I don't like what's going on, I'm like, oh, okay, time for me to leave and go outside. So kind of bounce back and forth. So yeah.
Nice.
So
So
that's
you
it.
got that entrepreneurial side, but you go
Yes.
back inside when you want to, and yeah, that's a cool mix. I haven't been able, as we were talking before we got on air, I haven't been able to convince myself to go back to a job yet. But
I don't blame you.
I say that loosely because I guess if people look at, actually my LinkedIn even isn't even fully updated, but I'm a partner in a number of different companies now,
Mhm.
and so I hold roles like VP and things like that. But it's like it's just the title for what you're doing, So I'll have to see if I ever get back to corporate life. I'm not sure if I will. I can't quite get back to those meetings. That's
Yeah,
what.
I guess it all depends. I mean, I've had exposure to, um, when I'm consulting, and if I really like the company, then, they're like, oh, why don't you come in full time? And oh, it would be great if you could be around more. And then I'm like, I don't know. And then I get sucked in and I go, okay, well, I really like them. I'll do this for a while. And the role, the work that I do quite often, some companies are ready for it and some companies aren't.
Hmm.
So if they really aren't ready for it and leadership isn't willing to kind of do the tough things that they should be doing to support it. I mean, I can't own everything because, I don't own the area that I'm trying to improve. So if leadership doesn't do what they're supposed to do, then it eventually gets tougher and tougher for me to do my work.
Yeah.
And at some point I have to say, you know what, they're not ready. I've done my best to persuade, and I do get enough ground covered, but then I'm like, yeah, this is gonna, I'm gonna die a slow death. So I might as well just move on. And sometimes, you know what, I move on and the next person that comes in is, fresh or has a different perspective, and then they
Yeah.
take it on from there, which is fine.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So we might jump around a little bit here based on
Sure.
kind of what pops in my head, and I'm kind of
Okay.
play sometimes. But so you've got your Lean and Six Sigma background,
Mhm.
and do you want to describe for anyone that might not know, because we had all kinds of people that drop into the show here, what is Lean and what is Six Sigma, like in a couple sentences?
Okay. Lean manufacturing. So I primarily do lean manufacturing. I have a Six Sigma black belt, but I don't really use it that much. Lean manufacturing is based on Toyota's production system, and they have a set of methodologies and tools and philosophies, not only leadership, but also how they engage their employees. And ultimately, you're optimizing processes, machines, equipment, people, and you're making sure that it's a smooth flow of product through your plant. Um, on time, good quality, you get it
Mhm.
all with it. So there's a set of methodologies, and the more experience you have, the better you are at it. Now, Six Sigma traditionally is if you have quality issues. So if you can't control the scrap that you're making, or you can't control the process and the quality isn't good, then Six Sigma tools come in and you zoom in, collect a ton of data, and
Yeah.
and then try to figure out the root cause and fix it. So sometimes they're merged together. I prefer to keep them separate. There's a lot of soapboxes about that I won't get into, but quite often they really are two separate tools for sets of tools for two different applications.
I like that distinction because so when I went through my MBA program, University of Tennessee here, they had we did Lean, Six Sigma, and Theory of Constraints,
Oh,
and
perfect.
so it was interesting because there was definitely different applications for all of them. And one of my professors was much more. I think he was also an industrial engineer by profession,
Hmm.
and he was much more putting together Lean and Theory of Constraints. And that's an
Okay.
interesting mix. He's written a couple books on the topic and that, and they did some work with the Air Force and things, so very interesting mixture. And that's where I've always tended to go, even though I have the Six Sigma. I'm not certified black belt or anything, but I've had the exposure to it enough academically and in some projects. But um, Lean is interesting. It's always intrigued me because it, to me, is a much more humane approach than the statistically oriented approach
Yes.
of of Six Sigma.
Yep.
Six Sigma is right for certain applications and it's right for certain people. So give me your take on lean and kind of how that moved you from the engineering world kind of into this human side of things, because, and we'll get to what you're doing now, which is much more on that coaching side and helping organizations on the human side. But what's that bridge between the two for you?
Okay. Well, lean is really a very specific form of industrial engineering, like the methodology. So you're accomplishing the same thing that industrial engineers would accomplish, except it's a very systematic approach to it with defined methods and tools. So you kind of speak the same language. If someone knows lean, typically other people will understand that same language. We have the same terminology and things like that. And Toyota really is, I mean, they're okay with sharing their tools because they know that their secret sauce is really leadership and how they engage people and how it's really the respect for people. And, you could do lean without involving the people who do the work, but it usually doesn't go very well. You have to include the people. So by philosophy and principle, lean is industrial engineering and making sure that people are part of it if you're doing it right. So that's where the people side comes in, which is, which I have found has always been the more I bring people in and engage them in the decision making, as long as the companies let me do that. So when they don't let me do that, I know, okay, this isn't going to work. But when you bring people in and you facilitate what we call Kaizen events or workshops, you bring the people in and you just walk them through a methodology, but they're technically the ones who are making the decisions.
Yeah.
So that's the part that, lean has it really built in if you're authentic with it. And, you're bringing people into, into the creation of whatever that new design is.
We used Lean Six Sigma, that combination extensively. Actually, when I worked for Gaylord Entertainment, Gaylord Hotels, we had a director or executive director of OpEx, Operations Excellence. Sorry about the shorthand, people. We had the director of Operational Excellence at each of our properties, and we worked very closely. So I ran the customer experience programs, the for guests and for meeting planners, and these hotels were just massive. I mean, 2,000 to 3,000 rooms, 400,000 to 600,000 square feet of meeting space. I think Opryland is maybe closer to 800,000. I mean, it's football fields, it's just massive.
Sure.
And you've got 20, 30 events sometimes going on. It could be a lot of small events and one or two big events, just so you've got all of these. I used to call it human logistics, the moving of people and stuff to get those people where they need to be. They're in a banquet, they got to move to breakout classroom sessions, they got to move to the next place. How do you flip these rooms fast enough so the next group can come in? It's like, it's crazy, and so we used Lean Six Sigma. And I think one of the stories that I remember distinctly, because I didn't run the Kaizens, but I would be invited in on occasion just because they wanted me to kind of be an observer on the outside. And we were running this one. Good friend of mine, what's his name? Danny Jones. That's who it was. I haven't talked to him in a while. But he was running it, and we were trying to see how long it took to take a ballroom for 500 people that was set up for round tables for dining. How long would it take to flip that to, let's say, a classroom setting, long tables with chairs and all that? And I think the best they could do doing their approach after timing it multiple times was like 3.5 hours. And so we broke it down. We're looking at this thing. It's like, and that was actually good, because actually in most hotels that size, they just go to a different ballroom, which means they can't optimize their space. They can't sell their rooms out, all this stuff. So I was really focused on optimization my first 2.5 years there. And then the latter 2.5 years, I added on the customer experience side. So it was like always kind of engaged with that. Theoretically, we actually figured out that we could turn the rooms in 26 minutes, theoretically. Based on once we lined up all the stuff. I think we got to 45 minutes. So 3.5 hours down to 45 minutes on a consistent basis.
Not bad.
But it was things like, you'd be like, well, what's the holdup here? I don't understand how long it took. It's like we had servers come in and set the tables and put the silverware all the way in. And it was like, well, if they did that in this, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was, what's taking so long? And there were all these stop gates that, because you didn't always have all the servers for 500 500 guests, you have, gosh, I think it's 2 servers per table, something like that. So I mean, there was maybe 100. No, it wouldn't be that high. Maybe 50. Maybe there's 50 servers or something like that. But they didn't all arrive at the same time, and so you wouldn't start setting the tables until everyone arrived, or you wouldn't go past certain stage gates. And then like putting butter on the table, they had like everyone had to stop and they would put butter on the table at the exact same time. So you could have one person who got there on time, another person arrives 30 minutes late, and so you'd have all this delay at every stage gate about what was going to go on the table when. So that's why it took them 3.5 hours. We're like, get rid of those stage gates. Everyone just goes and sets up. And it was a human problem is what it came down to.
Yeah. Cause you know what, until you actually observe it, analyze it, ask questions, until you know what's really happening there,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know. Like
Yeah.
you can guess, as you were describing, I'm like, ooh, that sounds like fun.
It was a lot of fun. I can see your eyes like, ooh.
Oh, that'd be a juicy one. So it's not, but what I think in my head is probably very, very different from what is actually happening. And you wouldn't know, you couldn't appreciate or even imagine the things that people are thinking and doing in sequence and everything else, unless you're there and you're watching it and you're participating. There's no way you could do that. And that's one of the big rules is,
Mm-hmm.
have to observe. You have to actually go out there and see it and experience it and watch it and ask questions and truly understand it before you make any changes at all. You can't be like on the outside and just kind of point and go, oh,
Right.
You should do this and you should do that. It's like, go away.
That's how the executives try to do it. Right. Yeah.
Out.
Yeah. Let's actually solve the problem. The old joke, hi, I'm from corporate, I'm here to help. It's like never works well.
Yeah, no, you're not. Yeah. Okay. Go away. Got it.
So that's cool. So I love lean because it's actually impacted a lot of what I do in my career. So I can tell it's definitely an impact. So you've got lean, you've been doing that for a while. How do you end up getting over into the high performance coaching arena? Like, what was that transition for you, or when did you kind of the light bulb go on there for you?
Okay. Well, I after being in corporate for a while, I went out on my own. I was doing consulting and I was doing training. I linked up with a community college in the area, and they were awesome. So I would do training, and and I just found myself repeating the same stuff over and over. And I thought, oh, I should really put this stuff online. I should really package this and put it online and actually get it to people in another way, because I'm just repeating the same stuff over and over, and it's very time consuming for me. And I wish that people would just have this information, and I want to just do the consulting part, but I got to train first before people understand it. So I'd rather just do workshops, but you got to get people up to speed. And then that's when I found Brendan Burchard and started going to his events. And it was through Brendan and his events and, his offering of this certified high performance coaching. I said, you know what, why not? I go, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use it, but I love people, and I do quite a bit of coaching from an engineering perspective on new things we do on the floor. And I thought, you know what, this is a good fit. It's a good fit to coach leaders. It's a good fit to coach, coach operators, technicians, and people that I work with. So, so it made sense, and it really does fall quite nicely into everything else. Everything else that I do, because I, can do the process and the people thing together. So anything that helps either one of those two things ultimately will improve the whole.
So when you step back from it and kind of look at it, I mean, this is the transforming the HX, right? I love talking about how what you may be doing really affects the experience for the people and changes lives, right? So how do you see that on a day-to-day basis, where the coaching, the industrial engineering work that you're doing, how does it really affect people's lives and change how they engage at work? Maybe what it does for them even outside of work.
Well, one of the things that I really love about lean is that it's not just industrial engineers who learn it and do it and know it. And it really is a great opportunity for other people who might, have other degrees, or people who don't have degrees who made a choice to go out and work, which is fine. It gives them a set of skills that they could contribute beyond their day to day without going out and getting a degree, because there's probably a reason why that just wasn't for them. So, but learning it from someone who has experience and, is successful with it, I look at that and say, especially when I meet people who really like I could see when the lean bug bit their ear, and then I will give them extra time and attention. Hopefully it's an entire team. And, I'll share with them, like, these are great skills to learn. You don't have to have a degree to be able to use and implement these tools. So for me, I feel great about giving people a gift of knowledge and methodologies that they can take to, if they leave the company, or, some organizations will, promote people into other roles because they've done really well with lean. So, I just tell them, like, hey, you know what, learn it for yourself, learn it for, as another set of skills that you become, more valuable to the organization. You work on really fun stuff that's very fulfilling and you're contributing, and, and people really love it. So it's a nice thing to be able to have, be able to, put on a resume that, oh, we did this workshop and we doubled productivity and we did this and we did that. And, that's valuable no matter where you go. So that's one of the things that I really love about it is, lean helps everyone become an industrial engineer without needing to go to school and all that stuff. Cause that wasn't fun.
Yeah. Well,
it definitely wasn't fun. So
I love that it's a methodology for thinking, and it really does. I think people that embrace lean, they find a way to put it into a lot of things they do. I mean, I can tell stories when my girls were young and I was much more deeply involved with the lean itself. I would look at how we did things around the house and I would start rethinking it.
Yeah.
It's like I did the laundry at one point. I was like doing the laundry. I was like, wait, if I downsize the wash load, the dryer will get done at exactly the same time that the other wash load gets done. So then, it's like, I mean, I'm a nerd. I admit that I try to recover, but it never works,
Yeah, you just got to be careful who sees you do that, or when you actually share, like, hey, I created Kanban cards for my grocery for my groceries, and I had like my we have these like big drawers where we keep like the some of the Tupperware and that stuff, and I had things like labeled around the edge, and
everything's taped off, and those who don't know lean are like, what are these guys talking about? They're crazy. Well, I think,
but it's like labeling and just using different methods that we would use. It's applicable anywhere. So
I think
cool.
I don't know if we call this a lean method, but when Amazon came out with the little buttons that you order with, like you can have your laundry detergent, whatever else. I forget what they call them. What were they called?
Oh, like order again?
Well, it was like the little button
subscription.
No, they have little buttons that you can put around your house, like tape up in your cabinet or whatever else. And it's got different brands, like could be your laundry detergent. You press that button and it submits an automatic order. I can't remember what they call them now. I haven't thought about that for like 2-3 years. But when I saw those come out, I was like, well, that's like the ultimate lean tool right there. It's like, I'm out, hit the button, refresh, and it comes the next day. And
Exactly. Or almost out.
Yeah, almost out. That's right. You don't want to be totally out. You're right.
You got to put a line on the, on the thing. When it gets to this level, press the button.
You see, my Kanban in my house is like, we got to be out for about 2 days, and then I'll go to the store.
Especially when you're desperate.
Especially these days, right?
Yeah.
So it's awesome. So it's funny to think about some of these things and how we've applied them. Now you're into the high performance coaching. So are you doing? I'll ask the question, but how are you doing that now? Because you're doing things even outside of the industrial engineering. You're coaching leaders and executives. So take us a little deeper into that work and what you're doing there. And I know you have a book called, make sure I got the name here, Empowered and Productive Teams. So talk a little bit about that work that you do with leaders. And then I want to dive deep into the team productivity element of this that we're going to talk about tonight.
Got it. Okay. So especially when I'm consulting, especially if leaders can't quite get there themselves, I'll do high performance coaching. Sometimes I'll coach teams. There might be an entire team that they all want to do personal development. So I'll coach a whole team together. But then a lot of my coaching clients really have been individuals, not with organizations, but I do want to tie it more with organizations because I think it can help people break through some barriers and become more high performing as an individual so that they could be a better leader. So that's really the connection, because when you can't do the things that you should do as a leader and for your team, you probably should do some personal development to kind of break through that. And go fix yourself a little bit, and then you could be more for your team. So that works very, very, it's separate because there really is a methodology of, like what you want in your life, like clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. And there's like 12 sessions, and it's a very prescribed topic. Each session has a very specific focus. And there's some logic behind that. Now, so it's separate, but it does tie together. But when I talk about so when I wrote my book is really about manufacturing leaders, the practices that they do each day and their behaviors in order to engage their team. And someone, had asked me so what separates you from your peers? Well, first of all, I love being on the floor and I love talking to the people. Not all my peers do. I can't say all of them. Some of them, really do enjoy being out there and talking to people, but a lot of them don't. It actually is, okay, that just wastes time and takes me longer to get things done. So I could do these things to people instead of, why waste time with people? I'm like, okay, that's how you get things done. And that's how you get the buy-in. So my framework for my book, someone challenged me, well, what separates you? And I kind of brainstormed, these list of things that I do that my peers don't do that I believe makes a difference. And once I kind of boiled them down, I was working on them for really like a couple years, and honing in and zooming in on them. And I think it breaks down into kind of two big categories of things you do with people to develop a relationship and keep people open. And then the other half are things that, how do you engage them and get them involved in improvement? So you take people out of their day-to-day and get them to contribute and feel great about being a part of something beyond their day-to-day work. So the first 5 things are relationships, and then the second are getting results. And a lot of people want to just jump to results, and you can't do that. It is because if people don't know you and they don't trust you, and then if they don't engage, whatever you create on paper to do to them, it will never work. So you have to develop that relationship first. You have to get to know people. People have to know that it's safe for them to share, that you're going to do the right things with the information that they share, and acknowledge and see them. So, there really is 2 parts, and people want to kind of skip that people part. And it's like, oh, you can't. You're just missing probably 80% of the opportunity for that to be successful. Because if people aren't on board, they're just not on board.
Yeah. It's fascinating because a couple of things that pop in my mind is, and I'm looking at your list of 10 here as my little cheat sheet on the side. And the first thing that popped in my mind is it's like Maslow's hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. We need safety and security at the very base of that foundation, or we're not going to go up to the level of being part of something bigger than ourselves, or self-actualization or mastery of skills. We have to know we're safe and secure first. Mm-hmm. And I think that to me stands out, like today with what we're going through with COVID right now. That one for a lot of people is still in question. Do I have a job? Am I going to have a job? Do I have income? Do I have a place to live? I think so. A lot of people are still kind of in that space, but even bring that inside the office or on the manufacturing floor. Do they have the safety to say something to their supervisor? Because if they're the one with the black mark after their name, are they going to be the first one let go if things continue to get tighter and tighter? So I think those are some really, really important things. And then the second piece that came to mind was and I think you and I have talked about this in some of our phone calls, but in the work I do on customer experience side, I'm looking at the 5 elements of the acronym is PERMA, P for positive emotion, E for engagement or flow, R for relationship, M for meaning, and A for achievement or mastery. Right. And so it's, so
Yeah.
there's all of these, as you're talking through this list and look at this, like you're touching on all of those things that, and this comes out of positive psychology, PERMA does, and it's what makes us thrive. We pursue these 5 things, maybe not all of them, but at least some of them. And when we do them as individuals, we thrive. So your list of 10 really ties very nicely into PERMA as well. And so I'm really intrigued by the approach that you have here. It's very interesting
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, under each one of those 10, so those 10 are practices. And then within each one of the 10, there's 10 behaviors. Because, when I would go out and, companies are like, yeah, we like how you engage people, and can you teach our leaders how to do that? Sure, I could do that. And the first one is go to the people. Like, you have to go out there. You have to let people see you and talk to you, and they're going to get a tone very quickly, whether they're afraid of you, not afraid of you, trust you, not trust you. And so people would ask me questions. Well, what do you do when you go out there? I'm like, ooh, really? Okay. All right. Well, you have to greet people, and, you have to make eye contact and you have to give them time, and you have to have some consistency. You have to be a positive presence. Otherwise, do you want people to say, oh, good, Lisa's here, or, oh, Lisa's here, look busy? Like, how do you want to show up? How do you want people to feel like when they see you coming? So, but going to the people, like, you can't do the rest of the things if, like, you're not out there. Like, if they never see you, they're like, well, where is she? We're struggling here and she's nowhere to be found. So you have to go out there. And then from that, the other practices come in. But I just found that as I was sharing these high level, people really didn't know what those micro behaviors were. So then I added to it and I said, okay, what do I do? What are some of the things I do? And I also, so the interesting part that I've been able to reflect on is I have probably had conversations with literally thousands and thousands of operators, mechanics. I mean, in 30 years, spent a lot of time on the floor. Each company has a couple hundred people, and I've probably met them all and had conversations with all of them. And once they trust me, there would be a time where, let's say we would be in a conversation, you and I, and someone would walk in and there would be some type of interaction or some type of thing, and then they'd leave. Well, the operators would always debrief me and say, did you see that? They didn't even say hello. They came up, they talked to you. I wasn't. So I was able to, like, pick apart all these little behaviors. And over time, people complained and focused on the exact same things. So the behaviors were very similar and the responses were very similar, to a point where I could watch a conversation and go, yeah, that person's not doing that, like, when you leave. just saying. Like, I could see it unfold, and
right.
I know what the operator's thinking, and I know what what that person was thinking. It could be a leader, it could be, a support person, whatever, a cross-functional, like, engineer or a planner or something. And just on that interaction and how they behaved and how they treated each other, I could predict what they were going to say about it, and I could predict what they were and were not going to do once that person walked away. So
Human,
it's all the same.
yeah,
And
human behavior is all the same. Yeah.
those are all the things that are in the 10 practices, and then the 10 behaviors under each one of those 10 practices. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
But, like, as you can see, that, like, the quick assessment, it's like, sometimes people say, oh, that's common sense, Lisa. And I'm like, yeah, but are you doing it? How well are you doing it? Like, you need to do it, but if you're not doing it, it doesn't count, and I have a couple of things, a couple of quotes from, like, Brendan. Like, one of the things he often says is, one of the things with people is people buy into what they create.
Mm-hmm.
And and then another thing is common sense isn't always common practice. So
That's a good
like,
one.
hey, it's common sense, but if you don't physically do it, like, yeah, it's not common practice. So the practices and behaviors really help people zoom in to see, so that they could reflect and say, what am I doing? What am I not doing? And there's an order, but then they all get mushed together. Like they don't, they
Yeah.
don't stay separate. And it's really not it becomes, they happen all the time. They don't happen in an order afterwards, but after you kind of get used to them. But, there's something there that if you're struggling, go through and look at them and say, okay, what are some of the things I'm not doing? And
Hmm.
can I ramp that up, or can I make sure I include that and see if it makes a difference?
Well, and they're really easy. So we've got a question first of all. So David Norris, he says, can those 10 practices be shared? So is there a place where
Yes.
people can go download these?
Yes. So I will, if you go to lisascolnick.com, I will do a forward slash, do you want me to do Tony or Bodo? Do you want me to do the whole name, Tony?
You can do Tony. That's fine.
Okay.
Or you
So
whichever you do. You do whatever you
yeah, I'll
want. You
just do
tell me.
Tony.
Okay.
So if you go to Lisa Scolnick, so LISASCOLNICK.com / Tony, I will put those in there. I will
Okay.
add the assessment. So give me a little bit of time, and I will have those up by tomorrow morning.
Very good. Okay. And I just put it out here on the Facebook
Okay.
comments as well, so people see that.
Okay.
So yeah, so in there as an example, so go to the people is the first of the practices, and so spend time with your people, understand their work, learn about them and what they love, frequent check-ins, especially when struggling. I mean that right there, if managers and leaders if managers did that, they would turn into leaders. Let me say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's fascinating because they're really simple things, and I think back to when I was working with this well-known large client. They don't like me saying their name, so I won't. But they're very well-known, very well-respected. And I kept telling, I was helping set up their customer experience programs and that, and do their analytics and such. And I said, I really need to get on the floor of the call center. And they're like, that's not what you're here for. And you're not authorized because you might hear someone's social security number or whatever else. And it's like, you don't understand. I'm here trying to help you improve the experience. I've got to get a taste for what's happening. I've got to talk to the people. So I ended up, because I couldn't do it that way, I had to find an end run around, if you will. And because they were like, no, you can't interrupt people in the call center, So I found out where people went after they got off work, the happy hours they went
Oh,
to.
there you go. Buy a couple beers and you get all the scoop.
And I would sit down and chat with them, and I became very good friends with them, and in that process met a lot of people, and
Yep.
just had these great conversations. And so I'd come in later in the week, and I'd be like, oh yeah, this problem that we were talking about here's what's actually happening. And the VP was like, how do you know that? Well, I was talking to someone, and they were sharing this, and they're like, well, we have to validate that. And then of course they take another week to validate it, come back and say, you're right. And it kept happening over and over. Finally, they just stopped asking me how I knew, because I was like, I'm not telling you how I know, because I'm not going to be, told I can't do that anymore, because that's the only way I
Yes,
get the
exactly.
information. Or I used to call them hallway conversations, like walking down the hallway, you bump into someone, you're like, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's just chat about something or grab a cup of coffee. It's those casual conversations sometimes that go to the people. That's where I would pick up a lot of things. So I love these because they're practices that, probably like you, a lot of these are things that you learn when you're going through the whole process of learning the lean manufacturing principles and the way of thinking, the methodologies. But you've made them so simple for anyone. You've kind of taken away that industrial language to it, so that
Hmm.
you could apply it in any environment pretty much. I mean, it's like, I could apply these to kids if we wanted to write a children, a parenting book or something like that, right?
Sure, sure.
Go to the
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
spend time with them.
Gotta spend time with them. Be a positive presence.
That's right.
Don't only show up when you have bad news to share. But even though, what's interesting is, even though true, authentic lean people should be baked in there, I can't tell you how often it
Yeah.
actually isn't.
Yeah.
I go into plants, and they're they supposedly are very well established. And then I walk around, I see, no, they're not. Like they haven't gotten the people part of it. So if they're going to dismiss anything, it's usually the people
Hmm.
part goes away and they just jump to the results.
Yeah.
So it should be part of it, but it's not. And the style. So one of the things I wanted to add is the style of leadership is servant leadership.
Yeah.
And like I've never heard Toyota actually come out and say that their style is servant leadership, but that is what they're doing. Servant leadership / transformational leadership, but that is what they're doing. Like they're serving their people, they're
Hmm.
respecting them, they're bringing them into the mix. So it's you know, that list is kind of my take on it, like how I've used it. But yeah, all that stuff is there, and again, it is common sense, but they tend to be things that people sometimes don't feel like doing,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it makes all the difference.
I think your point is so valid because so many people in the lean world, and this is true, I think, of theory of constraints, lean, Six Sigma. Six Sigma doesn't tend toward the people because it's more about measurement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I see it
And just
over
the
and over again.
belts do it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, but it comes out of that, all that quality movement from the 80s and 90s, right? And I've actually said this now, in customer experience work. I think I actually mentioned this in my book that I wrote a few years ago. Is it comes out of the quality movement, and so people forget about the emotional side of things. They forget about humans are emotional beings that occasionally are rational. It's we're not these machines out there, and so you can't have a defect rate and apply it like you would on a machine in the factory. You've got to look at the human being and saying, hey, their adjustments, if their dials change every day, because if they had an argument before they left for work this morning, they might not be in a good state, or if they're worried about money or someone's health, or you name it, their calibration, right, is
Mm-hmm.
off from where they were the day before. And you're wondering, why aren't they performing like they did before? I know you can do better. Well, they could if they were in an optimal state of the mindset and the emotional state, but humans aren't designed that way. We're designed to
Exactly.
fluctuate. So how do we keep them? And that's why I think it's intriguing to me that you went down the path of the high performance coaching side, because I've also got some certifications in coaching and that as well. And so it's interesting because we've kind of both taken that path, which I think is why we match up so well when we have these conversations. But we got there from very different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the other thing, you mentioned servant leadership, and then you also use transformational leadership. So what's the meaning there behind transformational leadership versus servant? Is there a difference? How do you see those?
Um, I I'd like to add the transformation in there because especially with lean and manufacturing companies, like you can't stay the same. Like you have to keep improving and you have to keep changing. So it's how do you engage all of your people to ultimately transform your operation and continuously work on that? Like you're never done. There's never a point in time where you stop. And the more people you can involve and the more opportunities you find to improve, you're ultimately transforming the business to, like good luck competition. You'll never even catch up with us. So there are elements, I believe, of transformation in servant leadership, but I think with continuous improvement, you could really ramp that up. And just to have that rally with the team, it becomes, it there just becomes this energy where people are doing, making the product or whatever they're doing, but then there's this passion behind it of, yeah, how can we get even better? So it's like, when you're talking about the changing the rooms over at the hotel, just think of a pit crew. We don't always use that tool in lean, but just the excitement around that and how the whole team is looking at how do you shave seconds off, and it becomes this goal or this rally that the whole team is behind, that they all want it to happen. And that's the passion, that's the transformation that you want to happen. But I believe you do need to do servant leadership without servant leadership and without helping your people, like, I think it's tougher or impossible to do the transformation part, because then
Yeah.
you're pushing it, whether people believe in it or not, or whether they believe in you as the leader or not. And if they feel that it's just, oh, you're just pushing this, to cut costs, or you're pushing this, sure, you can have transformation, you could just focus on costs, but at some point, when it's pushed too far, then people feel used. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't care about me as a person, you just want to make higher profits, and I'm just your pawn on your chessboard.
So in that realm, it's been interesting. I've had a lot of conversations with CEOs over the last 4 or 5 months, and one of the things that really stands out to me is that to a T, these CEOs and business owners as well, they are being those servant leaders, and they're being transformational because they look at it like, we have to shut down operations within 2 days, or we have to go remote within 2 days. That it's a something they never imagined they'd have to do. And
Mm-hmm.
and then they thought, okay, maybe it's just for a short period of time, but it's been extended periods of time. So talk a little bit about that, like from a remote working perspective. I know in the manufacturing environment, they may not be remote, but I think the principles apply there. We've seen, I think, and this is something that I put out there, and I would love to have people disagree with me and give me a different perspective. But I think what we're moving through right now is the emergence, I think is the best way to say it, of a whole new era of meaning, where people are going to focus on what's meaningful to them, being part of something bigger. I think in 2008, 2009, it was all about moving from buying stuff and accumulating to, let's have experiences of life. Now
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to take that further because of what we've gone through, and say, for experiences matter, yes, but let's go deeper in the significance of life, what's meaningful to me and to the people around me, which ties in, I think, to part of what you're talking about is, how do they become part of something bigger? How do they look at and say, shaving seconds off as an example, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's all get in this and do this together. We become part of this cohesive whole. It's like this group flow, and like, oh,
Yes.
here's an idea, here's an idea, and here's an idea, let's try this, let's try that. But the whole goal of it is to make the entity itself better, whatever it is that they're striving for, that purpose that they're going after. So do you see the same thing happen, and how do you see it playing out with these organizations that have to shift to this remote environment?
Mm-hmm. I so I think so the key with people is you have to develop a relationship, and there has to be trust there. Ideally, hopefully leaders have had the opportunity to, like, get to know their people, like, before this happened, because now we're seeing each other just on a screen. But it doesn't mean that you can't connect with people. um, and I look at, like, when leaders connect with their people, like, if you're connected as a group, that group has a personality. You're not connecting one-on-one, and there has to be that one-on-one time. So next week I'm leading a workshop, and I didn't know the supervisor in the area that well. And he's been on workshops, kind of in the past, a long time ago, and he has experienced some lean. And I set up a one-on-one meeting with him, get to know him. This is what I'm doing, sharing how I want to engage you. um, tell me first, and then I'll share things. So tell me about your experience in this area. So what do you see? What do and ask a lot of questions. And it's more about having other people share, and I learn from them first, before I just say, oh, well, we're doing this workshop, and yeah, this is, start barking out orders. And, if any of those things don't connect, or he's like, whoa, she's going after this, and I don't want her to, there will be an immediate wall that's put up, and I won't get any further. But it's like, at the end, because we didn't know each other, and at the end, he was like, wow, like, thank you for setting this up, and, like, spending time with me. No one's done that before. I'm like, wow. Like, I'll hear that, and you just say, wow, no one's done. So it's those nice things, those nice connect on a on an individual level with people. So if, let's say I had this, team, and, and I maybe knew a couple people, I would be setting up these calls and saying, let's talk one-on-one. Let's talk to the group, but then let's also talk one-on-one. So even you and me, I mean, we've had some phone conversations, but, I feel like you're my, one of my best friends, and, we've never actually been in personal space together. So, so do I think it's impossible? Absolutely not. But you still got to go to the people, and you still have to, especially one-on-one, and make it as open and non-threatening as possible, and ask them questions about them first. And when you have opportunities in there, and that's where some of the other ones come, you have to make it a safe place, and you have to reinforce that. Like, my intentions are not to do this. Like, I just want to learn. Or I'll put things in there like, hey, whatever you have today, I get it. Like, no judgment. I mean, areas evolve. There's so many changes that happen. So yeah, sometimes it just needs a refresh. So there's little things that I'll say to put people at ease. But those are all things that really should happen one-on-one. So people know that they themselves, can feel comfortable with you. Then from there, them all coming together into a team, they're individually feeling safe as well as safe in a big group. Like, sometimes people only feel safe in a big group. That's because they have the protection of the other people. But you got to do the one-on-one, or if you're doing, Zoom calls or WebEx, whatever you have, you can't allow people to, I'm going to turn off my video. No, go put some clothes on. Don't wear your pajamas. Come to the, you're at work. Turn your video on. You have to be, there in the conversation. And, when you have like, big webinars and things like that, a lot of times people don't, I've been on some online seminars, and there will always be a percentage of people who will turn off their video. And you have to question, like, unless you really are in your PJs, or is it really that you're doing something else and you're not present? So, that is one of the things that, like, with my team and people that I work with, we have to have our videos on. Like, if if you have to, like, I don't know, tend to something, you could quickly turn it off. But the idea is you put it back on again.
It's the 8 hours of video time, and I've got to take a break to eat in between. So let me just turn it off for a second. And
yeah, exactly. Okay, let me eat these bag of chips.
There are some days where it seems like I'm back to back almost 8 hours, with it. But I think
turn off, if you're eating chips, you got to turn off the volume.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'll have to send you an update later. But my company, I partnered with 3 other companies, and we're actually launching right now a virtual environment. So it's like a virtual conference center, auditoriums, the whole works. And so instead of seeing each other face to face like you would on Zoom, we have avatars that you actually move around. It's almost like a gaming world is really what it is.
Oh,
and
really?
So I'll send you a link so I'll take you through it and we'll show it to you. But what's interesting in there is, and we debated a long time, because we were looking at putting on a conference, and eventually we just said, let's just buy and build a campus. And so we've got this massive campus that's coming online.
Oh,
and
cool.
So yeah, it's very cool. So
that's fun.
It's going to be interesting to see. But I share it because the one thing we don't have is that visual face to face. You have your avatar, but what I love about it is what you can't do on Zoom. As an example, it's like you can't just bump into someone across the cubicle. You can't walk down the hallway on Zoom. On Zoom, it's like you've got to know someone is there. You've got to know the meeting room number. It's like you've got to be present. But with these avatars, we were kind of listening to what's not working for people right now, and a lot of it, like the CEOs very early on were saying, how do you keep that office, that water cooler conversation going? I've got developers. How do I keep them, that they're bumping into each other, chatting with each other, getting ideas? And so it came out of conversations like that as we were looking for this technology for a conference of all things in the music industry that they wanted me just kind of be the experience guy for. And then we start looking, said, no, this is something much bigger. And so it's all these other ways that as we are remote, Zoom is awesome. It helps us. We couldn't do it without Zoom. But what's going to evolve next is what's really exciting me, and where we're going to come up with some different solutions. So yeah,
Oh,
I'll invite you in so you can see that.
I'm sure it's going to be very fun and creative.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I got another question here. The process that you were describing there with servant leadership and the transformational leaders and that, and how you go about that, meeting with them in advance. This process David says, this process can expose weak leadership. It's hard for the team to outperform. It's hard for the team to outperform the leader's self-image or self-esteem. You find the same thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's where, that's where I think the personal development sometimes needs to come in for the
Yeah.
leader. Not everyone is meant to be a leader. And in a lot of manufacturing companies, you know, there tend to be like a lot of the engineers are there and then they want to move up and they become leaders. And, if you don't love people, it's really tough to be a good leader. You'll find reasons why you shouldn't go see people. So that really has to, come together and come into play. So if you're already in a leadership position, then I would recommend do some personal development. Or do coaching. Get a coach. Now, if you're going to, if you aspire to be a leader, then I would do that work now. I would learn leadership as well as work on yourself. And I think they go hand in hand, because a leader with a big ego and it's all about them, it defies the servant leadership philosophies. So your role as a servant leader is to not, be in front, and say, okay, come on, everybody, we're going. And then not everyone's following you and you're just like still going anyway. There's a dynamic there where you are looking for, you got to use your team for the whole thing. And so picture, you and I were going, we're on a hike and we go up into a mountain, and there's, I don't know, we get lost, and there's, two of us, we raise our hands and we say, hey, like I could help us, get out of here tomorrow, but I could also help us be safe tonight. And, we're both saying that. Well, when that group splits up, how do they decide who they're going to follow? Right? Are they going to follow the person that they know,
Mm-hmm.
like that they've chatted with on the hike? Absolutely. But once, if you have a fire going and you found some water and you have some shelter, and I don't have any of those things, what's going to happen to the people who thought they should follow me? They're going to go, well, Tony's
I'm
got
leaving.
some. I'm leaving. I'm going to Tony's group. So, it's a very complex thing. You
Yeah.
can't just say, oh, I'm going to be a leader. I mean, there's great responsibility with that. So in your team, in your hiking group, most likely you didn't say, oh, you're going to light a fire and you're going to go get water, without knowing who really knows how to light the fire. So if you assign that to the person who's never lit a fire before, they'd be like, okay, I don't know how to light a fire, but I'll try. And then they're scared to death because they know they're not going to do well. But then the other person is saying, Tony, dude, like you have me getting sticks. I know how to build a fire. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're underappreciating me. So you really have to look at that whole team and say, what do I have here?
Yeah.
And how do I dig out people's gold? How do I find what they're good at? And how am I going to spend enough time with them to notice where their gifts are, so then you can leverage and use them for the transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't about you or me as those leaders to say, oh, well, I got everybody out of the woods. It's about how do you use and leverage that whole team for what they have to offer. But then you as a leader see the vision and know, okay, this is what I need to do tonight. And this is what I need to do tomorrow to get us out of here, and have a backup plan just in case we can't get out of here tomorrow.
So it's interesting, the way you've described this. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about the hero's journey and how
Mm-hmm.
that unfolds in stories, because we see the hero's journey come up in customer experience either the customer is the hero or the company's the hero, right? From the customer's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it has very different implications. If the customer is the hero, it usually means that they're talking very badly about the company. They're trying to save someone from the company. And so as I'm hearing what you're saying, it sounds to me a lot like that hero's journey is that as a consultant or as a leader, I am not the hero. I cannot take the role of being the hero. I have to be the guide who helps everyone else be the hero. And it's like, we would not watch Star Wars if Luke Skywalker, was upstaged by Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had to be the hero.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi has to be the guide, right? And he has to
Yeah.
go away when Luke is ready for the next stage of his journey, who then he has to find another guide, which is Yoda, right? And it's so
Yep.
interesting as you watch the storyline develop. We have to do the same things as leaders, as consultants, we as parents, even. We have to let someone else be the hero as we're their guide, and
Yes.
that is
It's like a
force.
mentorship.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
It's like looking at, like when I do training on this, I have a bunch of different images, and I'll have Yoda and Luke Skywalker, and I'll have Karate Kid,
Mm-hmm.
and Mr. Miyagi, and I'll have these relationships of this like teacher
Mm-hmm.
and the student, and what are those characteristics that you see. And it's all about that student. It's about the teacher or the mentor or the servant leader looking at that student saying, how do I get the best out of them?
Yeah.
It's not about Mr. Miyagi saying, oh, well, I'm going to jump in this ring because this kid can't do this. Let me show how it's done. It's done with care. It's done with love. Like, I believe if you don't love all your people, you have to find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to, and they all have to be, you got to love them all the same. Like, I know your daughters would probably debate which one you love more, but you can't. You have to love them all the same. Right.
It's funny you say. I'll have to have a conversation about that. So there's an interesting point here is that you made the statement. How do you get the best out of them? And it's funny because that flashed me back to the days I was in corporate, and when leaders would say that, often what came across to me is, how can I get the most out of him for the benefit of the company? But knowing where your heart is and how you teach, it's really, how can I get the best out of this person for themselves so they grow and they transform and they become this,
Yes.
they'll become a leader in themselves because they see what's possible, right? And I think that's the difference between, there really is the difference between enslaving people to do something, and I need to get it out of them so that their labor goes into and makes profit for the company, versus really transforming people so that they become part of this amazing new thing that we create, and they take
Yes.
pride in it, and that. And so when we talk about
It's the
transforming,
outcome, the productivity and the
yes,
cost benefits to the company are the outcome of doing the right thing with the people.
yes. And we often get that backwards. We're talking about, a lot of lean practitioners get that backwards because they're focused on the outcomes and they forget about the people. And I think that's true not just in lean, but in a lot of different areas within organizations. And even today, I'm concerned about that even today, because I'll speak to the restaurant industry. My wife's in that industry, and what I saw was the companies were they had to scale back. They furloughed a lot of their employees. They tried to pay them as long as they could. But like those managers, they ended up having to keep the restaurant open. And so you had maybe one or two servers delivering to go to the door kind of thing. And the managers are doing the cooking and the dishes and everything else. And so the managers, I think we have leaders in certain industries that probably are at the edge of burnout,
Mhm.
because as the leader, they were trying to keep everything open, trying to keep the company going forward, and they never got the break. And now you've got people coming back into the workforce, that are, they were facing their own sets of challenges. And now you've got these burned out leaders who are
Mhm.
facing people coming back in, and maybe they're grateful they have work, but maybe they're also concerned, how do I pay my bills? How do I pay my rent, my mortgage, whatever it is,
Yes.
And I think we're going to see some clashes happen there in those key industries that were essential industries where,
Mm-hmm.
people had to work, or had to, couldn't work, but they needed to keep the companies going. So I'm not sure where to go with that. It's just, that's just something that crossed my mind as a risk that we face in the economy right now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? So I think it might also depend on how what the leader is like before this happened.
Mm,
So if you have a leader who was good to you and listened and didn't try to wring you dry, you're more likely to help them than you're more if you're good to your people, they're going to step up and help you because it there's some reciprocity there. You know what?
yeah.
Help me you know when we're in this different situation, and I'm going to make sure that I help them. So there might be some leaders who really aren't burned out. They were happy to like roll up their sleeves and appreciate
Yeah.
what their people were going through and how they had to do the work. And now that people are starting to come back, they really appreciate it, and
Thank
even
God you're
more
back.
so go and to even be explicit about it, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I did that. I don't know how you guys do that, so I have a true appreciation for that. Be okay with coming out and saying that and go,
Yeah.
you know what, I I could not last as long as you guys did. You know what, this isn't, I'm not good. I'm not as good as it as you guys are. Or sometimes when I have the opportunity to actually do the job without harming anyone in manufacturing or messing up the product or having it cost too much because I scrap it, I'll do the work.
Mhm.
And I let everybody laugh at me because things might be tedious. And I go, okay, so let's have fun with this. And I will tell people, I just had, a group not long ago. I'm like, I will never tell you guys to go faster because we know how pitiful, what a pitiful job I did on that. It was really hard. It was super
So
hard.
we need to
So,
have you partner with Mike Rowe and do a show together there, right? It's
oh yeah, for
dirty
sure.
jobs.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So, I think if, maybe some of the people who were benevolent beforehand, they
Yeah.
like people appreciate them, people are like
Yeah.
reciprocating. Now if someone was kind of on the fence, be like, okay, now I really appreciate my people. Or if someone wasn't so nice, they might still be the same and then they deserve what they get.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
It just, I think it's going to be interesting to see because of everything has happened. None of us have ever gone through this before,
Yes.
or anything close to this. I mean, in our lifetimes, there's been other events, but not like at this level. So, um, fascinating. So we've covered a lot of ground. So we've talked about productive teams roundabout way, because we talked about the 10 steps and that. We've talked about remote working. We've talked about leading with lean thinking. We've talked about a lot of that. What else do you want to cover? Is there anything else, like, kind of open the gate here that that you feel you just want to bring up as well?
um Let me think. uh you know i I mean, one of the things really is, I mean, my life's work and my passion really is this leadership and, and following these practices and behaving in a certain way that, there sometimes it does take time. And one of the things that I wanted to share to kind of piggyback on the second question that was asked is, sometimes if so whether it's manufacturing, it's any other industry, sometimes people may have had a bad experience with a different leader, and they may not be all that welcoming when you first approach them. Don't let that scare you away. Like, still go out there, like, just take what you get. Okay. And say, okay, they don't trust me, and it's my responsibility to get to know them well enough so that they do trust me and they do see what I'm about. So that's really that first step. So if someone's like, yeah, like, where do I start? Just go spend time with people. And then when you see what they have going on and you see what they're doing, just ask a lot of questions. Ask questions in a non-threatening way. And And if they give you whatever answers they give you, like say, yeah, I see that. I could understand that. Like appreciate and see them and say, hey, no judgment here. This looks like this is really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a conversation that it's just a safe place for them to say whatever they need to say. And even if it's a little rough at the beginning, just once you break through that, the second time you're with them, and you ask questions, so spending that time, eventually you become part of them.
Yeah.
And the my favorite sign is when you've crossed through, is when people come looking for you to tell you that something's going on and that is important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't trust you, they're not going to tell you. But if they know you're going to do something with it, they will, like, they'll come find you. And that's one of my signs. When people come looking for me because they have something important to share, I'm like, yeah, we're good. Like
So
we're connected.
are you putting those in the book as well? Like signs
Yes.
of, okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Because I
Yes.
think that's something that I love that you just pointed out, because I'm thinking, there's the persistence going back again and again. There's the humility of recognizing that they may have had bad experiences with other leaders. So
Mm-hmm.
you just be humble and let them be the expert in their own space. There's the
Yes.
vulnerability of asking the questions and letting them answer and building the safe space. So there's all these characteristics of a true servant leader that have to show up there. One that I loved using, and I found it to be very effective, is that when I would go out to let's say the properties when I was working for Gaylord Entertainment, or for some of my clients, I do this if they're larger organizations, and I'd have these conversations with people that were on the line or behind the scenes. If they came up with an idea, I would end up being back at corporate, and we'd be talking about things, to say I would actually bring that person's name up. So and so said this, and
Mm-hmm.
I made sure often to say their name
Yeah.
if they're VP or like someone 2 or 3 levels above. Like if you there was a time where I remember specifically the general manager was in the room for one of our large hotels, and I mentioned someone he knew of the person, but I don't think he knew the person. When he flew back to that hotel, he went to their cubicle and said,
Awesome.
your name came up at corporate, and they were just like glowing for a month. It's like,
Exactly.
and then
It doesn't take
it's
much. It's like,
exactly.
it's so simple. Like you could do little things and people are so appreciative.
Exactly. And then so the next time they were actually, I think before I even went down there the next time, they called me up and said, I heard my name was brought up. Was that you? And it was like at that point, their door was open. I could ask them anything and they'd be willing to share it with me, and they would tell me all their stories. That I learned some things that I was like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have learned that piece, because now I don't know how to address that. But there's so
That's
many.
so that's so important. Like that actually falls in number 10, stand in the back, is
Nice.
about deferring credit and putting your people up front.
Yeah.
That when you do have something to celebrate, that that you give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing worse than having someone like answer for someone else as if they did it, like taking credit for the big salad.
Yeah.
like from Seinfeld, like I bought that salad. Yeah, you never take credit for the big salad. So yeah, you got to give it away.
I
Yeah.
love that. Well, David Norris says here, he says, Tony, your shows are always great. However, this one is worthy of an Emmy and multiple replays.
Aw,
And this is why. So here's the why behind
that's
it.
awesome.
Lisa's perspectives, insights, and ability to communicate this is truly superior. So the Emmy is not mine, it's yours.
Oh, thank you. Oh my
So
goodness.
yes.
This just warms my heart. And this is just confirmation. Thank you. David, you said?
Yes, David.
David. Thank you, David. This just confirms that, I'm in the right place at the right time. I found my purpose. And I just need to share and, make sure that people, are equipped, with, with different tools and try different things. And, so I'm very grateful, very grateful. And just a quick story of how I actually got to this is actually from my dad. Like my my first connection with this whole thing. So my dad worked for Ford Motor Company. He was a tradesman for 41 years. And, when I said, okay, I'm going to be an industrial engineer, he said, oh, you're going to work in manufacturing companies and stuff. And he goes, the people know more than anyone about what is happening. And he ended it with, whatever you do, take care of those people.
Very true.
You take care of them and they will take care of you. And I just remembered that. And any place I went, especially if you're like, gee, I don't know anything about this company, I don't know about what's going on. You know what? Take care of the people. They will tell you everything. If you're kind to them, they will bend over backwards to give you information. And it's that intel that is like so valuable. So, like it's gold. It's gold. And if someone's willing to give you that, it's like, okay, you've made it. So again, thank you, David. I appreciate it. It's nice confirmation, especially since, my book is coming out and I've kind of, started and stopped a little bit because I was kind of, afraid to like, oh, will people like it? Should I get it out there? And so thank you. That really helps confirm and reinforce that, yeah, I should get this out there.
Awesome. Well, we've had a lot of people jump on, jump off. They've come back, and some of them are coming back now, which is awesome. So it's good to see. So yeah, if you're here with us, if you're just joining us, go ahead and watch the replay. If you got comments or questions, definitely drop them in there. Lisa will be more than happy to answer them. I'll be happy to answer them.
Yep.
This replay, it'll be out there. Goodness, I'm trying to think. There was one more thing I was going to ask, I think, but I don't remember what it was. It was triggered as you were talking there, but this has been awesome, Lisa. I deeply appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for this. It was both entertaining and also very insightful. And it reconnected me with my lean thinking days, which I hate to say are too far away from me right now. I haven't been back there, recently. So
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is great.
Thank you for having me. Like, this has been so much fun, and, I'm very grateful and happy to be here and glad we could do something together,
Absolutely.
after our phone calls and, messages back and forth. This is really cool.
Well, and you, one of the things that I do appreciate, that you often see the comments I make about my daughters and the stories that happen in my house. And you're right there, because of your daughter apparently very similar to my daughters.
Yes. You gotta love the dry sense of humor and the just, calling it out, and just I think my daughter could learn a few things from your daughters.
I trained them too well. They now shut me up with their dry humor, which is pretty funny. I have no response anymore for them. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I do try. I do try to, pull things over on her, because I could be a little dry myself, and, she's learning to say, okay, you're not telling me the truth. She knows when I'm kidding. So
absolutely. What is good for them. It teaches them, they get better at reading the social cues, and I think it's really good for them. And, whatever happens with their friends, and then, if they ever end up in a relationship, that person's going to have to be really, really, really able to withstand that. So that's
yes.
I'm preparing them for it. So
there you go.
This has been awesome. I appreciate it, Lisa. And how can people contact you if they want to reach out and continue the conversation, get to know you better,
Sure.
maybe get some help from you in something?
Sure. So they can email me at lisa@lisascolnick.com. So if you want to, just put my email in there, just give me like 24 hours just to make sure, because sometimes it gets a little busy, life happens. But yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions. Also, if you'd like to know when my book is coming out, I'll have a very specific launch, and I'll tell you where you can get it. And yeah, I'm excited to
I'm excited for your book
there.
coming out there. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have a publisher? Are you self-publishing in the first round of it, or?
I'm self-publishing in the first round of it, because I just wanted to. There's certain things that I wanted to be exactly the way I want it. and it wasn't necessarily, Lisa's going to become a New York Times bestseller. It really is to serve and get the information
Yeah.
out there. And especially for people who, when I was consulting, I kind of wish I had the book and said, here, go read this. If you don't believe this, then you don't want me.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, my
it's,
book back there, yeah, the same thing. I
yeah,
give that to people now as like, it's like my business card.
yeah.
And when they read it, it's like, it makes so much more sense to them. I wish I had done it so much sooner.
Yeah, because you can't always get in front of people and
Yeah.
share the whole content of a book, in a 10-minute conversation. It just doesn't work. So that's why I originally did it. And then
Hmm.
I do my dad's not on Facebook, so I could share this. So one of my pre-COVID visions was my dad's going to be 83, and I wasn't the book is dedicated to him,
Mm.
and it's about, whatever you do, take care of those people. And my vision has been to, have this big bag of books and surprise him at his breakfast club. And I've never been to his breakfast club with him and the
Hmm.
guys, and and I would surprise him, and he would definitely be shocked if I showed up. And then I picture myself giving him the book and making him read the dedication. The best part is making him cry in front of all of his friends, which I know he will. And then say, okay, move over. We have a book signing to do. And then,
Nice.
just, have both of us sign the book and give it to all his friends and whoever else
Hmm.
in the diner that wants one. But that's been my thing. So one of the things that I'm just kind of sad about is like, okay, I want to get this out there, but this needs to happen for my dad. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I was going to get out there and arrange it with the waitresses. And like, okay, I'm going to go, I'm coming in, I need help videotaping and stuff like that. So I have this whole vision of, just, making my dad cry and
Hmm.
embarrassing him, and then having a book signing at his
That's awesome. I
breakfast
love
club.
it. I love it.
Yeah. So actually when I do that, it might be a little bit later than I'd like, but eventually when I do that, I'll share the video and I'll probably post it so,
That's awesome.
so
Well,
everyone can enjoy that.
as you progress, let us know, because I know there are people that are watching tonight. A lot of people that I know that in the space that would, I think, benefit from and also love the book. So
Okay.
any way I can support you in that, let me know. I know my audience would do the same.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Thank you. And it truly is coming from my heart and, in my life's work and purpose. So I'm
Absolutely.
very grateful for that. For knowing that you have this community that would be interested.
Absolutely. So I look forward to seeing that. And for everyone watching, just letting you know that tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. I always have to do the time zone thing here. I will be back on here live, and we will have Catherine Canty, a recovering banker from the rural parts. We're gonna talk. Watch for the video that'll come out either tonight or early tomorrow morning. A little promo video, and you can see if you want to be back on for that show. I encourage you to be here. It's going to be a great conversation as well. Lisa, thank you so much again for being here. It has been fantastic. I've deeply appreciated it, and I look forward to the next time we can get together like this again.
Excellent. Thank you.